today at Plate and Ponder Empty Nesting with Jen and Chris Fenton. Emile Gladstone, say hello, please.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show.
Just so you know, we have an issue with one of the headsets. So Emile can't hear the cool, groovy tunes that are playing in the background, but that's okay because we have him here to share his wisdom and all the things that make him so intelligent and such a good guest. So, Emile, welcome.
Thanks again for letting me plate and ponder with you.
We're excited to have you. So tell us, what have you been up to this last year? Because I think it's pretty interesting. You're involved with the movie-making magic of Hollywood.
I'm a producer, and I produced a sequel to the 2019 horror hit, The Curse of La Llorona, called The Revenge of La Llorona for New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers.
And I am pressing the applause button, so you know, Emile, because I am applauding the fact that you made a movie in a very tough environment for making movies.
I am so grateful every day for the opportunity.
So where are you living nowadays? You're where?
I'm living in Hermosa and in Manhattan Beach.
And how'd you get over to my house? Did you drive a long way?
No, I walked. It was lovely.
Did you get on the 405 at all to walk?
I was on the Strand.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Was it a terrible rainy day?
No, it's a stunning day. It was probably 80 degrees and sunny, not a cloud in the sky.
Are you enjoying the South Bay?
I love the South Bay. I mean, it's pirates and, people running amok, people that love live music, people that love food. This is a lively town. I appreciate the heartbeat of the South Bay.
It is definitely a lively town, and it's one that I think is quite a bubble. In fact, you can get sucked into it and maybe not leave or want to ever put on closed shoes again after you get the flip-flops on. But it seems like you're assimilating pretty well.
Oh, yeah. It's in the DNA.
Now, what's interesting is that you're not an empty nester, but you will be in a handful of years. So I think it's good for us empty nesters to talk to empty nesters, but then to also keep it real by talking to people that are still in the thick of being good parents, right? I mean, you're in the middle of that.
13 and 15-year-old, so we're a few years away.
And so before the South Bay, I think it's an interesting story, right? And it's actually one that's, it wasn't as tragic for you as it was for a lot of people we know, but why are you down here in the South Bay?
We are refugees from the fire. The fire happened, the Palisades Fire, and although our house didn't get burned down, it did get smoked out pretty good, and our kids' town got burned down. So the town that they walked to, the high school that they were going to go to, all of that changed. So we needed to change.
So give the setup of that area, because a lot of people, we're in 40 markets, by the way, Plate and Ponder Empty Nesting, and hopefully we get a few more because you're on here and you have a lot of international, like global appeal. So I'm hoping that carries a little weight as we start to expand.
I get a piece of the uplift, right?
Yeah, once we start to get the uplift, we've hesitated on running any sort of crypto ads yet on the podcast, but if we get
crypto.
There, yes, exactly. I will say it's a little confusing. I had actually driven up to Malibu for the first time 2 weeks ago with a friend, Chris Chapin, to go see his son play volleyball up at Pepperdine. That was the very first time I had been north on the PCH from the 10 freeway, mainly because I didn't want to go up there unless I actually had a reason. I felt like there was something wrong with just looking at things. I did find it amazing that 20440 PCH is still there next to Moon Shadows, which is not there, and that's where my adventures in LA started. So
I mean, it is just random, the universe, and who got devastated and who made it. We were, obviously the fires were in January, and we evacuated, and we were looking at the app, and the app was this like Firewatch, or there was some app that everyone was directed to, and that very app would tell you if your house was on fire or not. It was very, very, very bizarre.
So if people been or know, like Forrest Gump, he ends at the pier, Santa Monica, after he crosses the country, right? North of the pier is where all this happened. Like, explain, like, as you're driving north of the pier, where did the fires first start? And you're Santa Monica Canyon, right?
I'm in Rustic Canyon, which is on the Pacific Palisades side of the canyon. So if you are on Chautauqua, going up, that is the top of Rustic Canyon, and if you go straight on channel, that is Santa Monica Canyon. In the middle is Latimer, a park that sort of separates the two canyons. The Palisades was incredibly devastated. It was really awful. 100 yards from our house, the Alphabet Streets burned down. I personally know, and we're in 5 different homes that burned down. Grounders, they call them. I didn't even know that that's what they called them. It was just so random what house made it and what house didn't. The universe is got its own plans, and you are just a passenger sometimes. But thankfully, my family and I are fine, and we were able to find a buyer for our house, and we moved to the South Bay to start a new life.
And what's interesting about that area where you are, I think, is like there was like was that the Shane Smith stretch of there's the river that cuts through Rustic Canyon, is that right?
Yeah, the watershed. Yeah,
and then it goes all the way up to Riviera Country Club, right at the far end.
It's really beautiful. It's it's a microclimate. Most of the water from the San Bernardino Mountains and a lot of the California mountains, the aquifers go underneath Rustic, so you have these extraordinary, redwoods and pine trees and butterflies and hummingbirds, and this ecosystem that really only exists in a square mile and a half or so. It's really special.
Well, and it's crazy too, because I've read a lot of interesting, like just out of curiosity, Rustic Canyon, you have Topanga Canyon, you have some of these canyons that for some reason they suck more moisture out of the clouds too. Like there's actually more rainfall that falls in these canyons than say around it. So you'll be in the middle of Rustic Canyon and it's like lush and green.
That's right. Most of that water though is coming from it or not.
Right.
That's where the aquifers are massive underneath that area. That's why that area is so unique.
Yeah,
very special. Lived there for 13 years.
It's really, it is beautiful. There's actually a good public school system.
My kids went there.
What's that called? Santa Monica
Canyon Elementary.
Canyon Elementary.
Very special.
And there's a fair amount of entertainment people in there, but there's all different kinds of walks of life and people that have been there for 30, 40 years that bought their house for like a couple bucks, and then the people that came in later. It's
a lot of artists. It's a little bit more crunchy than, let's say, the Huntington or other parts of the Palisades.
So I mean, like, I don't want to, you don't need to cross into like the controversial parts, but like just on a macro level, like what's the bigger difference from where you were, which was probably a little more suburban? You got to drive to stuff, although you had good restaurants down at the bottom there.
Certainly the heartbeat beat stronger here in the South Bay. I mean, it was very hard to find anyone anywhere at 9:30 at night in the Palisades. Very quiet area, not a lot of nightlife. Here you got live music and people go to bars and people go to restaurants, and it is very much alive. And the Palisades is somewhat subdued even before the fires.
Well, and I think what's interesting about you too is that you've experienced LA in a lot of different ways, not just in terms of where you've lived, because actually you and I both lived in Hancock Park at one point, which is in the center of Los Angeles. But we've also, the two of us have explored a lot of different parts of the media landscape as far as what we've done. And in fact, I will brag for Emile, when I was a young agent at the William Morris Agency, maybe it was even before I was an agent, I can't remember, but there was probably no hotter agent in town than Emile Gladstone. In fact, he was, I think, poached or attempted to be poached by many different agencies, and ultimately I think Mike Ovitz, who was one of the biggest mahers out there, at least at the time, was able to draw you in. But give a quick snapshot of your career, just in a macro sense.
Sure. In 1990, I came to Los Angeles to fulfill my dream of writing movies. From 90 to 95, I worked in physical production to make a living, first as a PA, then an office PA, then a production coordinator, while I was trying to find an agent. Pursuit. Extremely hard to find representation. Forget about good representation, any representation. But eventually I was signed by the William Morris Agency by a guy named Steve Weiss in 95. And about 7 months later, I discovered I really wasn't a writer, and just because I wrote 3 scripts. And
I don't think I knew you were signed by William Morris. That's crazy. Wait, who was your agent?
Steve Weiss.
Steve Weiss. Oh, in television.
Television,
yeah.
Television Lit.
And he had I think his dad was Lou Weiss. And
Abe Lasvogel. Yeah, he was a legacy guy.
Wow.
Rest his soul. He's no longer with us. He was very sweet.
And he had a brother, Evan Weiss, I think, too.
Didn't know the brother.
And wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I had my first cappuccino at William Morris in 1995.
95, I was, I got promoted in when was it? November of 95. So, wow, that's interesting. I wonder if I had to sling your scripts around at all.
Maybe. I don't know, but
I covered them.
I did discover that I hadn't written enough when I was like, here are these 3 scripts. I mean, certainly you could do something with one of these 3. And he's like, what else do you got?
That's crazy. So then so like myself, who had written a book in college and then thought maybe I could be the next, I don't know, J.D. Salinger or something like that, sitting in cool cafes on the west
It's so
side.
romantic, yeah.
Yeah,
I told people I was a writer to get girls. It was part of a game that I had no idea I was playing.
Yeah, it seemed a lot more romantic and cool back then, until you find out how hard it is to make it as a writer, and then cut to today, where it's a completely different landscape and probably a lot more desolate out there, unless you're one of the few.
Well, I will say that I've been in LA since 1990, and I've now been a writer, an agent, and now a producer. The one consistent thing that I'll tell you is that everyone's always said yesterday was easier. So in 1990, people were talking about how Hollywood was better in the 80s, and in the aughts, people were talking about how the 90s were missed, and everyone always talks about how much harder it was. So the conversation that's going on right now about how hard it is has literally been the same conversation I've had, literally for 30 years.
Well, I'm playing a sad trombone, just so you know, because you can't hear that without the headset. But I will say that yes, we did. When we were in the business, we didn't have to trudge through 6 feet of snow and walk uphill the whole way, right? But we did have a bit of a Wall Street of a 90s situation where there was a lot of money coming into the business. What we missed was, I think, when not only was there a lot of money in the business, but there was also this gunslinging attitude of just go by your gut. There were green light committees were one person. People running studios were 26, 27, 28 years old. If you were into it, there was plenty of cocaine sitting on the middle of every table. We got into it, I think, well, you were a few years ahead of me, but the crazy gunslinging was coming to an end, yet there was still plenty of a fruitful bounty to have.
Sure. I mean, the economics were very different. Home video was a cash volcano, and every day was a phenomenal day at the mailbox for the studios when people were buying Die Hard for the 17th time because they did an extended version of it. But they were still saying how hard it was and how much easier the other guy had it 10 years ago. You know, there's no doubt they're making less movies now. There's no doubt that there's a lot of metrics that might suggest that it is a harder climate. But it's just too many people here. If there were less people, it perhaps would be less difficult, or maybe the same degree of difficulty, because it's always been fucking hard.
It has always been hard. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, because it's actually, if you can get success, it can be lucrative, and it's actually pretty high profile, and it gives you a lot of privileges that a lot of normal people simply don't have. You can get a reservation at any restaurant. You can get free stuff all the time and all that. But it is a bit of a lottery. It's not always cream rising to the top. You gotta be willing to create your own luck, which means you gotta really, really try to own all those tickets to win the lottery.
Sure.
But even then, it's no guarantee. I mean, I think you and I both know a lot of people that probably had the goods talent-wise, maybe even had the persistence with it and put in the grind and all that stuff, and it still didn't work out for them.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the way it's always been. Timing has a play in just about every game, and Hollywood's no different. And every day, 1,000 people show up to be the next actor, the next director, the next writer. Nothing has changed. More, people showing up every day. They're making movies. The audience is out there. Some of the movies are incredibly successful, and some people are doing very well. Yes, there are less up-at-bats now than perhaps at the height when you and I were younger. But ultimately, if you adjust for scale and the amount of people that came to Hollywood, it's probably the same level of hard. Like, it's just a consistent thing I hear in Hollywood. It's how tough it is now. Well, I got news, buddy. It's always been hard.
Yeah, I will say the one difference that I think is different for us, it was different for us and it was different for everybody else that came into the business prior to us when you compare it to now, is I think COVID has changed the dynamic in terms of proximity to potential mentors, the ability to absorb everything by the hustling and bustling of an office that's filled with potential mentors, that wax on, wax off ability of trying to, just be that sponge in this massive office of energy and insanity, that has quieted down a bit. And that's the part
there's less people that this business can afford, right? It just is. There's less infrastructure. There's less studios, less deals. There needs to be less agents, less assistants. And yeah, that sucks, right? Okay, it's competitive. Okay, you want to be in the movie business. You want to make movies. You want to touch pop culture. It's going to be hard, really hard. And even if you grind, and even if you're talented, it may not be your turn. And good luck on the next lifetime. Maybe that'll be great for you. It's just always been hard. Always.
The stress that you seem to be under as you explain that seems to be quite lacking and almost zen-like, and I love that about you, because I'm sure 20 years ago it probably wasn't the same. But
sure.
I think you get jaded, you get some gray hairs, and you start to realize, wait a minute, In fact, I even had a conversation with somebody the other day about, oh, as soon as we make this deal, like, things are going to be, and I said, don't even think you're going to make that deal. Like, just let's put our heads down. Let's go after that deal. Let's like make it happen, but don't be dead set that it's going to happen.
I think that the human condition is to suffer. And, if I look at myself in 2006, I was an agent. I was not yet at ICM. I was making $750,000 a year. And I wasn't happy.
And what year was this?
2006. And I wasn't happy because I knew that a contemporary of mine was making over $1 million, and I thought he was a dummy. And I was like, how is this guy making so much and I'm making so little when I was making so much? And I think that's a young person's folly. I think that as you get older, you start expressing gratitude in different areas and recognizing, what's really of value experientially in your lifetime, and keeping score in simply a financial way is diminishing returns because there's always someone making more. So if the metric for your success is only money, you're never going to be truly happy because it's never going to be enough. You're going to feel that way. You're going to look at someone else and be like, oh, they have a nicer car. They go on better vacations. They've got it. Why can't I be like that? You're not even appreciating what you got.
No, I think that's really true. I mean, it's that keeping up with the Joneses that's always been an issue for a lot of people. But when you put all the alphas and the narcissists and the whatevers in particular businesses, and let me tell you, I always thought it was the Hollywood business that had them, but now I'm realizing it's in finance, it's in politics, it's in a lot of these businesses where everybody's a shark, and it is hard for people to get to that point where they're like, hey, you know what, I made it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to, really bask in the things that I enjoy doing in my day to day. I'm not going to constantly strive to keep growing my revenues or whatever. I'm going to actually go, hey, I'm one of the few people that get to be in a left brain, right brain business and actually apply both sides to it and be a part of the cultural fabric that builds society and builds the belief systems and the things that people gravitate towards on an emotional level. Like, that's a real blessing.
No doubt. I think that's the right mindset. For me, it's easier because I'm living my dream come true. I was a little kid and I've wanted to be in the movie business my whole life. And I came here to be a creative, and I'm a creative now. And in the middle, I did some biz stuff and biz dev stuff. But, I was always creative in that job as well. So, I feel very grateful to have a dream and grateful to go after it and be grateful to see it come true.
So, all right. So you brought up agent. It makes me think of secret agents, which puts to mind like somebody like Jeffrey Epstein. I think earlier in the green room, we were talking about how this is a strange time to be alive. Can you hit on a couple of those things that we were talking about? And because one thing about Plate and Ponder is we like to plate and ponder, and that doesn't mean just sit around bantering, even though a lot of people like that, and quite frankly, they like it more when Jen does all the talking.
She does have a nice voice, Chris.
She does. It's a nice voice. She's got that sassy sort of thing going. I love it. But we also like to cover, sort of what's going on in the ether right now, and what are the things that you think make it a really strange time? Like, we can hit a couple of those.
I mean, the Jeffrey Epstein emails and files are, unlike anything I've ever seen. It touches so many different systems, politics, media, sports, entertainment. I mean, there's just so much that he had his fingers in so many different pies and documented it all. I mean, as someone who has grown up in the business without the internet, we were trained very early on that email was evidence mail. This was talked about. This was talked about in the institutions.
Well, where do you talk? What's interesting about things is, like, when I think about, I hadn't really put all this together, but you just brought up an interesting point. Like, when I was trained at William Morris in the mailroom and as an assistant, there was a policy at William Morris that was to put it in writing. Everything had to be in writing. That was in every memo. It was like, put it in writing. And I think that had to do with this fabric of society that was, about record keeping, about making sure people held to their word. Accountability.
But let me ask you a question. The car wash guy that dealt cocaine, did he want it in writing?
Well,
so they put the equivalent of that in writing.
I think he had it in writing with the kids at Crossroads that they were buying the drugs from. Those high school kids had some sort of contract with those valets that was in writing.
The thing is that yes, and I ran a lit department, and I was a partner at two different agencies, and yes, the idea of putting it in writing was a thing, but you would have to have some sort of like morale, like just an idea of what was right and wrong. And if it was at all wrong, if a client or a colleague was doing something wrong, you did not put it in writing. You walked to your managing partner and discussed it. And there was a lot of discussion before it was put in writing. The fact that, these are all brazenly put in writing shows sort of a lack of accountability and I'm a master of the universe and I'm above the law. And I don't really care because the law doesn't pertain to me because I am a master of the universe. And so the ego and the brazenness of these emails really, it's a really gross pattern of lawlessness, and not just lawlessness, like a lack of moral fiber that we can do whatever we want to do without any consequences.
Well, I might actually add, and I agree with a lot of that, but I might actually say, Epstein, I mean, he was a demon in so many ways, but there was like a cleverness of his evil, villainous behavior.
Yeah, so he's a Zodiac killer.
Right.
There's a lot of geniuses that have lost their moral fiber.
So I don't think he ever had moral fiber, honestly. Like, I don't think you could ever do what he did and actually be
like John
born with
Gacy. I
anything.
mean, there's 100 examples of serial killers and deviants that are incredibly bright.
But don't you think he almost created a purposeful email trail that lured people into emailing with him? Like, even to the point where like his email address was something like Jeff Epstein Vacations or something like that. It's some like sort of like Tropic Vacation email thing. Like, it's a weird, like or Jeff E Vacations or something.
All the people we were communicating with were very high net worth individuals that were above the law in their head.
But I think he created a casualness off of this Jeff Vacations email that was like, hey, don't worry, just email me back. Like, I'm on the road, email me back. Like, oh, I'm in flight, email me back. Like, he almost was like this Venus flytrap of saying, hey, I can't talk right now, email me, right? So then they were sucked into that, oh, it's safe, let me email this guy.
Maybe. I mean, I can't really speak to it. Ultimately, I know the difference between right and wrong.
Oh,
and
I don't
it's whether someone's casual with me or not. And certainly I've done things that are illegal, but the trafficking of women, of underage children, how it's talked about, I mean, it's really unsettling, and I hope they all burn. I really do. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. Everyone should burn.
I do think I did have a parking ticket in, I think, in New York that I don't think I ever paid. So I definitely know that I have broken the law. I probably shouldn't put that on the record, but that was a long, long time ago.
I broke the law. Breaking the law can be fun, but as long as it doesn't ruin people.
I think it was Judas Priest that had that song.
Breaking the law, breaking the law.
Exactly. Great tune. Great tune. It is, I think, okay, so going into a strange time to be alive, we knew there were definitely Jeffrey Epstein type characters that we came up through the business with, but like
not at scale.
At the scale of what he's doing. And by the way, the big mahers that we thought were commanders of the universe, and there were many in the media space, but none of them were playing at the level that he was doing, where he's like taking advantage of war that's going on in a country. He's getting arms to one place. He's putting Putin in the room with somebody else. He's got like, this guy is like an agent
really,
on steroids.
On a scale that is hard to really fathom. It's just all the people involved that facilitated the trafficking of these poor women. And all the men that participated in ruining their lives, they all have to burn.
Well, the part that I think makes it really strange and actually quite tragic, almost Shakespearean in a way, is all of this noise around Epstein and all of the unethical and immoral and criminal and villainous behavior. Creates such a distraction from the fact that all these women were like, we're talking about thousands, were like crazy victims, and we don't even know all
network of people that allowed that to happen, and they should all burn. The fact that Pam Bondi, when she testified in front of Congress yesterday, didn't even acknowledge the victims.
I thought that was crazy.
Didn't even look at them. They all stood up. They all showed their face. As embarrassing as that must be for them to relive that, to stand up as a victim and a survivor, to go in front of Congress and stand up and say, I've tried to contact the Justice Department and they won't talk to me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so villainous. This is so vile.
Well, the other part that gets me is just like this whole gaslighting thing of conspiracy, and by the way, why don't the victims name the perpetrators or whatever? I wonder if part of that is that they were so young and these guys were so old, and like unless you were in the business of like finance or whatever, you wouldn't know who these
You know who Howard Lutnick is.
yeah, fat hairy guys,
and
are.
they're
Like,
not journaling. They're not
Yeah.
journaling. They're probably like getting high or whatever they're
Well, they're
doing.
probably scared to death too. Like, and who knows what was done to them?
They're just
Like,
children. I mean,
it's
I have a 13 and 15-year-old girl. These are their minds are not developed. They're not, taking notes.
All right, I want to switch it to something more fun. I'm playing a little Austin Powers music. Okay, let's talk about AI in general. Like, what's the I actually think what's crazy in our business is we've seen some interesting stuff coming out from a Chinese AI.
Yeah, I saw it.
What was it?
You're talking about the Tom Cruise Brad Pitt video?
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
What do you think of that? Like, where do you think this goes?
I think first of all that Brad and Tom's likeness shouldn't be used without their approval, and I believe in copyright, and I believe that people should be compensated for their image and their likeness and their work. But I'm really excited about the storytelling tools that is AI. Not to replace humanity, because ultimately humans will always be at the center of art.
I agree.
Art is about pathos. It's about pain. In horror movies, we really care about cares and scares. In romantic comedies, we care about laughs and cries. The computer can predict what a care and a scare is, but they can't really do it, and they'll never do it. Because there's no pathos. They've never been broken up with. They've never had a parent die. They've never had a child sick. They can't feel. They can predict what that might feel like, but they fail. When I say they, I mean the computer. It fails. But yet, it does provide a lot of tools that is very helpful in iterating ideas and organizing ideas. And hopefully, look, if Hollywood's making a ton of money, if it was the 90s like we talked about, when the home video volcano was just spouting money every day, and every day was a great day to be at the mailbox for 20th Century Fox, then I would be outraged by AI, right? But the margins are small. It's really hard for these media companies to make money. People don't really see that, but I see it because I've gone in front of the Greenlight Committee now 3 times, because I made one independent film and I had to do that, and the margins are small. Now, yes, they can make a lot of money, but most of them don't. They make money over a very long period of time. And we have to figure out how to protect the ecosystem. We have to figure out how to make movies more profitable so that artists and studios can coexist and distribution can stay alive and movie-going can stay alive. Again, if this was more fat cats lining their pockets at the expense of the man, human beings, I'd be outraged. But people are suffering.
Yeah, and as you were talking about that, it inspired me to play a little emotional background music, because honestly, like, as you gave that, it was a bit of a monologue, right? Like that you would see in a Braveheart or something like that, where you get so excited about what the main character or what the supporting cast is doing that it brings this extra emotional tug to whatever the words are, right? And I look at the movies that are moving me now, right? Like if I'm on Netflix, I'm watching an action movie, which is similar to maybe something that I just saw on AI by this Chinese AI company. It doesn't move me because I've seen a lot of this stuff before. I've seen the faces, I've seen the stars. But then if I watch something like Train Dreams, the Clint Bentley movie.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, you loved it. Because how would AI even make something like that?
No, or how would AI make Hamnet? Or how would AI make Sinners? Or how would AI make Weapons?
Well, Sinners, I think you could. I mean, I would argue that if you saw Dusk Till Dawn, and you could probably come up with a version of that, right?
Sure, a version, but it wouldn't be the version that worked as well as it did.
Oh, for sure.
$400 million worth of.
No, it was incredible. I mean, it had an emotional tug. It was unique. It also, the way it was shot, you sort of needed to see it in a theater. I saw it in an IMAX screen. The music cues were insane.
So that composer is incredible, and he's getting a lot of attention, and the cinematographer is incredible, and she's getting a lot of attention, and it showcases the collaboration that is making movies. And yes, Ryan Coogler is a brilliant man, but he had extraordinary department heads pilots that helped him with his vision. And all of these humans could use AI as a tool to be more efficient, but ultimately they have to be driving the prompting. They have to be driving the decision making, using AI for this or that as simply a tool, not as the cake, but the frosting.
So I think when we talk about movie making, and I've listened to Ben Affleck and Matt Damon talk about this with Joe Rogan. It's sort of interesting, right? If you think about, like, if I look at the projections for Iron Man 3, which is like a big franchise, I happen to be one of the cogs in the wheel involved with that as a production executive. You know, the projections of a movie of that size with Robert Downey and that cast and its Marvel branding and all that stuff were like, you know, it was going to make 700 million worldwide. But I think what was interesting is that it made 1.3 billion. And so what's that extra $600 million? And to me, it was the script that was written that I don't think AI could deliver on in terms of what that they could deliver the 700 million. I think you could do that. But the extra 600 million that was made was the core idea that Tony Stark had to figure out what he could do to live with the fact that he will no longer be Iron Man 3. Like he will no longer be Iron Man. He lost that superpower.
Yeah, the computer could never figure that out.
Right. It's like people we know that lose the seat of the executive suite that they're in.
But I disagree with you in that I do not think the computer is good enough to even do the $600 million version of it.
Oh, I would say if exponentially it's getting better and better, like cut to 5 years from now, I personally think it would be foolish to bet against it. I'm just saying the emotional
will
core
always be at the heart of all of this. There is no way that AI will replicate the human condition. It can predict it, but it can't create anything that is really honest. And ultimately, you remember a movie because of its honesty, because you relate to it. There's something about it that you relate to it, and that's the writer. You know, and we've known since the beginning of the medium that how do you make a good movie? You start with a good script, and there is no way. And I've been a writer. I represented writers for 19 years, and I've been a producer for 10 years, and I've been around a lot of art, movie making art. No way in our lifetime will a computer now? Can they do a Steven Seagal movie or an Avi Lerner movie or whatever?
Sure,
like
sure. They're not programmers, right?
But not even. Yes.
Could it write the episodic?
But I don't think that
episode number 20 of CSI New Orleans.
Where it can do it is perhaps like Powerpuff Girls or some sort of animation for very young viewers. But once you have a more sophisticated teenage and above viewer, you're going to need human beings. Now, look, there was a time where every movie theater had an orchestra, and there was a lot of movie theaters, and there was a lot of violin players. And then one day, technology said, we don't need you anymore. And that was a super bummer for that violinist who had that steady job working at the movie theater in town. But they figured it out, and that's what's going to happen now. And there are going to be positions that are going to be optimized by AI so that we can do it more efficiently because we desperately need to, because the margins are not great. There used to, when you came to Hollywood, this is a difference between you and I, and I think it's a good one, in that you were a biz guy. You came here because this is where the money was. This is where the power was. It wasn't real estate. It wasn't finance. In 1990 or 93, it was where the money was.
It was the Wall Street of the 90s.
It was the Wall Street of the 90s, right? There is no doubt about it, right? And that is not true anymore. And that will likely not be true again. The people that love movies, love television, who come here because that is their purpose, will find their way. The audience is there. It may be a little less than it was at its peak, but it's still there, and it's $1 billion business. The media companies are very good. They're very expensive. A lot of employees, a lot of people that pay a lot of money for expenses. So, when they do their algorithm, the margins are very small. They're not high margins in the movies, but folks like me aren't in it because the margins are low and we're looking to sell lots of, dry erase markers. We're here to literally, touch the sun and create emotion so that people can have catharsis, because they're so not in touch with their feelings that they need to feel their feelings through movies and television shows. And it gives them great release to laugh and to cry. And that's why people like me are in the movie business, and that's why I have stayed in the movie business despite the lows and the highs and whatever, because I'm literally pursuing my dream every day. And the audience is there. They're waiting for me to do the job. They want me to do the job.
Well, what's awesome is that I feel like we talked about strange days that we're living in, and you talked about the things that we have to be aware of that are potentially detrimental to the future of this society in a lot of ways. But then I think you ended it on a humanity level, on an emotional core level, on a creative level, which is why right now you can't hear it because you don't have your headset on. I'm playing a little Indiana Jones theme.
Oh, John Williams.
You know what I'm saying?
Love that.
I think it's been awesome having you on, Emile. I love having you in the South Bay with us now.
I'm so lucky.
Like,
Thanks.
You're one of us in the bubble.
Oh.
And we got to get you back. I got to get my wife back from London and Paris. She'll be back in hopefully a few days, unless she runs off with Henri from Hermes or something. I don't know. But I think she'll be back, and we'll be back with Plate and Ponder Empty Nesting with Jen and Chris Fenton and Emile Gladstone tonight. 40 different countries. We keep growing and growing and growing. And until next time, I wish you all the best. Stay away from a guy named Jeffrey Epstein if you run into him. And be careful of that AI bot that you have on your computer. Until next time, we see ya.